The Zyrani were not used to chaos. Their society was a meticulously curated environment of peace and order, woven through centuries of unbroken stability. Zyrani Prime's laws were strict, and every aspect of Zyrani life was built around a concept called Har-Yun, which loosely translated to the safe and the serene. Aggression, recklessness, and personal risk were alien concepts, so when the humans arrived, curiosity and a bit of trepidation rippled across the Zyrani. What could these strange creatures want? Humans, after all, were famous across the galaxy for their unusual quirks, and while the Zyrani were a cautious species, they were nothing if not polite. Their leaders welcomed the new visitors with reserved warmth, opening the capital city of Teshrael for a grand cultural exchange. To the Zyrani's astonishment, the humans didn't just bring their arts and sciences. They also brought something they called extreme sports. The first incident happened in the central square, where a crowd of Zyrani and their humanoid guests had gathered to see what humans described as freestyle parkour. The Zyrani watched, wide-eyed and breathless, as a young human launched himself off a tall column, flipping mid-air and landing with what seemed like effortless grace. Gasps and shocked murmurs spread as he bounced from wall to wall, leaping in ways that defied logic. In Har-Yun, Zyrani society didn't have words for the sheer audacity displayed by this human who risked so much for so little gain. The Zyrani delegate, Ambassador Fir'kath, stood at the front, his eye stalks fixed on the human figure now balancing on a perilous ledge. Is he insane? Fir'kath whispered to his human counterpart, Jen Moreau, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and dread. Why would he do that? Jen grinned, seeming even more energized by Fir'kath's shock. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. We call it living on the edge. Humans do it for the thrill. It's the challenge of conquering your fears and pushing your limits. The Zyrani around her exchanged glances of disbelief and what looked suspiciously like fear. To us this appears suicidal. Is it not dangerous? Fir'kath ventured. Jen laughed, and for a moment, Fir'kath thought he saw a glint of pride in her eyes. Of course it's dangerous. That's the whole point. Without risk, there's no reward. Fir'kath's skin paled, his scales darkening. But what reward could there possibly be? You'll see, Jen replied with a wink. The Zyrani allowed the humans to continue their performance, albeit with stringent safety barriers in place. But even those proved ineffective at calming the Zyrani populace as the stunts grew bolder, reaching heights and risks that made every Zyrani onlooker cringe. The Zyrani couldn't look away, yet they were torn between terror and fascination. Most Zyrani went about their days avoiding even minor discomforts, so the very notion of these sports was profoundly unsettling. The humans, however, treated it like a celebration. On the 5th day of the exchange, the humans invited the Zyrani to a coastal cliff, where they would witness another of their sports, something called base jumping. The setting was beautiful by Zyrani standards, but nothing about the spectacle seemed beautiful once it began. 3 humans, dressed in what looked like suits of wings, launched themselves off the cliff and into open air. The crowd collectively gasped. The Zyrani watched in horror as the humans plummeted toward the ground, zipping along the cliff face with nothing more than a sheet of fabric and something called a parachute. The whole event defied every concept of Har-Yun, leaving many Zyrani struggling to watch. One Zyrani elder, a high-ranking member of the council, almost fainted at the sight. They are intentionally falling. Yet, at the end, the humans managed to touch down with surprisingly precise landings. They laughed and congratulated each other, relishing the experience as if they'd just won a grand prize. Fir'kath approached Jen, his voice trembling. How can you find pleasure in this madness? Jen leaned in closer, her eyes gleaming. Because that feeling, that mix of fear and excitement, it makes us feel more alive than anything else. It's hard to explain, but it's like every nerve is sparking. Fir'kath took a step back, his antennae quivering. You find life in the threat of death. Yes, she replied simply. In the days that followed, news of the human sport spread like wildfire. While some Zyrani found the whole display appalling, others were increasingly intrigued. What could drive a species to pursue danger? To seek thrill at the cost of safety? It was incomprehensible, but it was captivating. Then came the event that changed everything. The humans set up what they called a motocross circuit just outside Teshrael. They described it as motorcycles going over rough terrain, jumps, obstacles, that sort of thing. The Zyrani were skeptical at first, but some were curious enough to attend. When the event started, the Zyrani were once again stunned into silence. The humans raced their machines over rocky paths, zooming up hills and then launching into the air with reckless abandon. The engines roared, and the ground shook. The Zyrani spectators watched, their senses assaulted by the chaos, their minds reeling at the sheer audacity of these daredevils. One human took a sharp turn too quickly, his bike skidding out from under him. The crowd gasped as he was thrown through the air. He hit the ground, rolled, and came to a stop. The Zyrani were certain they'd witnessed the human's final moment. But then, as if to defy all logic, the human stood up, brushed himself off, and raised a thumb to signal he was fine. The other humans cheered and clapped, and the fallen rider returned to his bike, mounting it as if nothing had happened. At that moment, something clicked for the Zyrani. These humans were embracing the possibility of failure, of injury, even of death. And somehow, in doing so, they became stronger. The more reckless they were, the more they seemed to thrive. Fir'kath stood among the crowd, his eyes wide. He turned to Jen, who was watching with a wide grin on her face. Why do they applaud this mistake? Jen raised her arms, shouting along with the crowd. Because he got back up. Weeks passed, and while the human delegation continued their tour of extreme sports, the Zyrani could not help but feel a subtle shift in their own thinking. A small but growing group of young Zyrani began experimenting with activities that, by their standards, bordered on the reckless. It started with small things. A young Zyrani named Lekthar dared to swim against the stronger currents in the rivers of Teshral, something no Zyrani had ever done willingly. Others took to scaling small hills or even riding their hovercrafts faster than the speed recommended by Zyrani regulations. These actions were met with a mix of horror and fascination from the general populace. For Fir'kath, it was a troubling development. As ambassador, he felt responsible for maintaining the stability and order that defined his people. He approached Jen once more. Your people, he began, they are changing us. Jen nodded, looking out over the cliff where Zyrani youth were now gathering to watch human demonstrations. Maybe it's time for a change. Fir'kath narrowed his eyes. We value peace and safety. Her yawn is what defines us. But there's something beyond that, Jen said softly. Don't you feel it? That spark, that thrill. When you push past safety, you find something real, something alive. Maybe the Zyrani are starting to see that. Fir'kath hesitated. He had watched his own people over the past weeks, and he knew she was right. Even he couldn't ignore the tingling sensation he'd felt watching the humans defy gravity, staring at danger with defiance in their eyes. A final event was planned as a grand finale for the cultural exchange, a human bungee jump. A towering platform was constructed on the edge of a valley, where the humans would jump off, tethered to a long cord that would snap them back before they hit the ground. To the Zyrani, it was madness distilled to its purest form. The Zyrani watched as the first human volunteer, a young man named Danny, approached the edge. He smiled back at the crowd, winked, and then, without hesitation, hurled himself off the edge. The crowd screamed. Fir'kath's heart raced as he watched Danny plummet. Just when it seemed like the human would smash into the ground, the cord snapped back, flinging him up into the air, then down again in a series of terrifying arcs. Eventually, he came to a stop, grinning as he was lowered safely to the ground. A silence fell over the crowd, not from fear but from awe. Fir'kath felt something shift within him. For the first time, he understood what the humans had been trying to share. And then, he did something that would be remembered in Zyrani history for generations. I want to try, Fir'kath said, his voice trembling but resolute. Jen's face lit up with pride as she motioned for the team to help him into the harness. The crowd murmured and many gasped as Fir'kath climbed to the platform. Standing at the edge, he looked down into the valley below and felt the weight of his people's eyes on him. Then, with a steadying breath, he let go. The rush was unlike anything he had ever known. The wind tore past him, filling him with a sensation so raw and powerful that he could hardly contain it. As the cord snapped him back, he felt a surge of life course through him. When he returned to the ground, the Zyrani were speechless. But within moments, the crowd erupted in cheers, a sound that resonated through the valley and echoed across Zyran Prime. Fir'kath stood, looking out at his people, and raised a fist in the human gesture he had come to admire. From that day forward, the Zyrani adopted a new word into their vocabulary. Jaimar, it meant the thrill of the unknown.